Greetings, welcome to our weekly Tuesday show. Today we're talking human capital development powered by coaching and mentoring. This is the show in which we talk to coaches and mentors, the practicing coaches and mentors. We try to reach out to each other and try to deal with this topic, coaching as it plays a role in human capital development. My name is Sam Zimmer. Call me Coach Sam. Some people prefer to call me Coach Sam. I like it because that's the profession I'm practicing. This is the Comesa Television Network. It is a video streaming platform of Comesa Global online channels. And I'm joined by Coach George and then Sylvia Mamurare. And then, of course, our guests that will be introduced to you and our colleagues that will join us a little bit later. This is the mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. And of course, our shows are based on the principle we call the idea. This is a beautiful principle. We inform and entertain. We develop and educate. We empower and support. We associate and network. That's the idea. Today we have a special guest and we will be learning from her. And she says she will be learning from us, but she's the focus. Let me first ask the colleagues, the fellow anchors, to introduce themselves and tell us what their expectations are from this show. And then I'll spend a few minutes talking to our guest. They will be listening. And once we are done, we will then open the platform and then exchange in the interest of our viewers. So let me also welcome Divesh. Welcome, Divesh. We've just started. But let me start with George to say hi to the listeners and tell us what he expects from the show. Over to you, Coach George.
Thank you, Sam. And welcome to our listeners and our viewers today. It's always a pleasure to be part of the hosting team, particularly when we have a guest, and looking forward to some exciting things today. I've looked at her bio and things that she's achieved. I'm really, really looking forward to getting into the meat of things. My name is George Mtenda Zamera. I'm the founder and CEO of Vula Unlock Consulting. It's a consultancy based in Johannesburg. I'm an executive and leadership coach, a facilitator, a trainer, and I'm an author, and finally a lawyer who isn't practicing law anymore, but working on people to become better versions of themselves. I have published a book on goals and goal setting. It's called Winning the God Way. I'm a fascination for goals and the direction that it sets for individuals who pursue that diligently. I bring to the table in my business 40 years of business experience in various roles. And so working with people who want to grow and develop is really a passion of mine. I'm available on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can go to YouTube and check out my videos on there. But I'm looking forward to exciting, and thank you very, very much for joining us again. And we will be with you until 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome, Coach George. We're going to talk to another author this evening. She'll tell you about her book. And yeah, Sylvia, over to you.
Yes, good evening, listeners. It's quite interesting, actually, to have to join the team today in this conversation. And George, I always listen to your introduction, and I always say to myself, is my one also going to be as long as, just to give into that? But thanks for all that. Yes, I am Sylvia Mamurare. I am a member of the Comesa Group. I am currently an independent consultant, bringing into the table as well a 30 years experience, or more than 30 years experience of corporate world. I have been more in the field of people management and have run all the value chain of the human resources, including the human resources development as one of my core areas. I am currently, as I mentioned, more on the individual or independent consultant. So I do a lot in terms of the mentoring. I do a lot in terms of being involved in different settings, as in the chairing and the leading of the boards. At this point in time, I am looking forward to this conversation. I always enjoy joining this live stream, because it has come to me as one of the continuous learning, and maybe one has called it continuous development, because we are blessed to actually always have the experts that come to the platform, and especially have the people that are very knowledgeable with the wisdom and the experience. And one never leaves this platform not having learned every day. And I do hope that it will be the same with the listeners, that you get the opportunity to learn from all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Welcome, as always. Indeed, we never get bored of listening to you giving us your background, because there's always new people listening on the platform, so that's appreciated. I saw we had Divesh. I think he will join us just now. Yeah, let's start the conversation. Ndumi, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. I'm going to allow you time as well, just to give us your background, and then we'll start addressing some pertinent topic or questions around coaching in particular, and a bit around mentoring. I know you hail from the province of KwaZulu-Natal, but currently you are in Gauteng, am I right?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I am coming from KZN, as in born and bred in KZN, Durban, and I am in Johannesburg. I've lived in Johannesburg actually for close to 20 years, and I'm on a semi-sabbatical, if you can call it that, working on some things. And yeah, so I decided to, park the aeroplane so that I can fix the engine, service, put new oil, new systems, etc. So that's what I'm busy with at the moment. But of course, if I say semi-sabbatical, it means that I am taking work. I'm not actively here in the washing machine that is Johannesburg. So I'm taking a break from all of that right now. And so in terms of my introduction, well, I am a boundaries and self-leadership coach, and I actually do believe that boundaries are what moves the needle. Cannot even do discipline if you don't have healthy boundaries, because contrary to popular belief, we need boundaries with ourselves even. So half the time people think the boundary is about other people more often than not. Of course it is about other people, but I also believe that it is also about whether we hold those people accountable. And I feel that boundaries plug into self-leadership almost as they hang onto each other in this fashion, because boundaries are about self-awareness. Self-leadership is about navigating yourself to the direction in which you want to achieve the things that you desire. So by the time I was 40, I had worked for 20 years. I started working at the age of 18. So got my exposure in the corporate spaces at quite a young age. And I've been self-employed since 2010. And here I am. My background, formal qualification is marketing, BCom, and I've practiced in that space. But and I was doing personal development, coaching, work readiness programs, part-time volunteering, etc. since 2012. And in 2020, COVID was like a loud banging ring that just said, Ndumi, it is time to surrender. So I did. So since 2020, beginning of the year, I embraced coaching as my full-time commitment and my means of making money and my activation of my purpose.
Beautiful, beautiful. We're going to unpack that much more. I want to learn from you in terms of what you think the role coaches and mentors play in powering human capital development. We'll go into the specifics as you respond, but the first point I want you to address is, as the coaches and the mentors, why do you think it's important that we need to continuously develop ourselves?
Is that directed to me?
Yeah. Why is this continuous self-development so important for coaches and mentors?
Of course. I actually always say these two things. I access all my clients, or let's say 90% of my clients, via corporate. So whether that's group coaching programs for departments, business units, or individuals, because corporate is the space that I understand. So I always say, if I convince you to do coaching, even if you don't come to me, I've done something. I've done God's work, because I've convinced you to have the courage to hold up the mirror to yourself with the assistance of a coach or a mentor, so that you are able to look into yourself, identify the gaps that need development. So, and that's number one. Number two, I always encourage that people must be coached by people who are lifelong students themselves. So if a coach is not learning, they are not expanding, because learning equals change. Change equals expansion. We are human. We are here for, that's what human evolution is all about. But at the end of the day, I think even in terms of versatility, becoming worldly, becoming exposed, understand. I mean, today I attended a CSI event. I'm not in CSI, but there was a need for me to actually be there, and I was intrigued. I'm learning something new, and maybe somebody I'll be coaching tomorrow might need something that's relating to that space, or some sort of a plug. I feel that it is a huge responsibility that coaches be on a path of learning their personal development specifically, so that they increase their self-awareness, but also so that they we practice what we preach, because coaching in itself is a constant, progress. It's like, I'm doing this, now what? I'm doing the next thing. So if I'm not growing, then it feels almost like an imposter when I'm then encouraging others to be on a personal development journey of their own, and it could be in different shapes and form. It could be in the sector of money. It could be in the sector of actual personal development. It could be in the sector of any area of life. But I feel like learning is what keeps coaches alive as coaches.
So I hear you they're saying that it's not necessarily about the technical side of coaching that you must continuously learn, but learning in its own general terms, in broad form. Like you attending that CSI, you pick up new perspectives, new insights that actually build you and build your character as a coach.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my coaches is Donna McCallum, and some people might know her as the fairy godmother. She teaches on money, right? Her main teaching is around money. That's how I managed to get rid of all personal debts in 2017, even though I'm self-employed. Got rid of the credit cards and. But I learned so much through these processes, even though we're talking about money. But learning about my relationship with money has helped me strengthen my relationship with me, has helped me become...
How does that benefit your clients?
Well, because if my clients come into the session and they are complaining, so let me make an example. There's a gentleman that I was coaching recently, and his wife came back with a big screen TV, unbudgeted for, because it was on sale. Right? And he was expressing his discomfort about this. Now, if I had not gone through some sort of financial literacy and a program like Donna McCallum's and other programs that I've done that are relating to money, I don't think that I would have understood his pain. around just waking up and suddenly you have a debt of X amount on your credit card that you must pay for, and you are self-employed, right? So I wouldn't have gotten it. So comprehension, I cannot support a person from a place from my own blind spots. So I feel that coaches need to have as much versatility in their lives. That's why coaches typically, they've been challenged in their lives. I'm coaching on boundaries. I struggled with boundaries all my life. Right? So one of the biggest shifts for me in 2019 was when I lost my business. So I had to walk away from my own business, lost money and a business and IP, etc. So that event was a lesson. Is it a crisis? At the time, yes. What is it now? Right?
Yeah.
It's lessons for
The
me.
case study, isn't it?
It's a case study, and it's something that I can impart on other people. But if I'm only one-dimensional, I've got very little to offer other people. I can only really say, oh, but she's your wife, and just kind of sugarcoat the whole thing and not see the realness of the situation when a person disappears, it goes for the day, comes back with a big screen. I'm not quite sure how much it was, but I don't have a TV, so I don't know how much they are. Let's say it was 20K. Suddenly, there's this unbudgeted amount. As a coach, I understand that issue is not just about money, right? I'm not a relationship coach, but I know that to spend 20K unbudgeted for, that's not a relation. It's not a money conversation, actually.
Hold it there. We're going to come back to this coaching on boundaries. I like that topic. I'm not going to rush away from it, but let me allow Divesh to come in and greet the listeners, but also allow my colleagues to reflect on the few pointers that you have just raised. The first point we are addressing here, Divesh, is why is continuous development so important for coaches and mentors, and why is it a responsibility for all of us? But over to you. Welcome, and then of course you can take a bite out of what you have had since you joined us.
Yes, thank you very much, Sam, and thank you, colleagues, and a very good evening to our special guest, as well as all the viewers and listeners out there. My name is Divesh Motilal. I'm a resident DJ at COMETSA, a graduate of the COMETSA's Digital Online Streaming Mastery Program, and an engineer by profession. But like some of our viewers, as well as the colleagues on the call will know, I'm one of the parties who are guilty of believing in lifelong learning, and I've always been inquisitive, to say the least, to learn new things. I've done a master's in artificial intelligence, and I think with the advent of artificial intelligence, it allows one to learn so much more and so much more easier. So my interest in always learning new things has become much more easier for me. So I do, affiliate myself with the sentiment that as long as one is alive, one should always strive towards wanting to learn more things. And just on the topic that you had raised or were discussing, Sam and Ndumo, I also believe that we or yourselves as coaches can't necessarily continue to evolve if you're not learning yourself. And I think learning is definitely one of the cornerstones of self-leadership development. I just want to leave it at that point. Thank you, Sam.
Beautiful. Self-leadership development. That's the top. That's the theme as well. And Sylvia, an experienced trainer, so this must be speaking to you as well, but also reflect on what you have heard from Ndumi.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that background, Ndumi, because I think the most important thing that for me resonates well with what you have said is, when you indicate in terms of declaring, to be saying that coaches basically are supposed to be people that are expected to have that versatility, because there's quite a number of areas that could come into a coaching session. And that's the importance of ensuring that you continue to develop and to learn yourselves. I have said it in my introduction earlier that in these sessions, irrespective of the experience of 32 years in the corporate world and being in the human development sphere, I still learn, when I join these sessions on a weekly basis. And the point that you have said in terms of saying that at a certain point in time in your life, you then changed and you said, now I'm going to do coaching, and that will be as a means of generating income or a revenue on your stream. And I think that becomes even a much more critical area, where I agree with you to the fact that when you are even doing it at that professional level, development then becomes even much more clearer, because you are constantly going to be having new clients who are in the different fields. You're going to have new clients that are new in entering a certain sphere of business. And all those people, you need to be able to be chanting a way of coaching to them that will basically benefit them. And that will obviously require constant development. But I think for me at the moment is agreeing with this notion that actually says that, you cannot do today's business with yesterday's skills and stay in business tomorrow. So it's a field where everyone is required to develop. Everyone is required to constantly look into that field. I have been a facilitator or a trainer at my workplace during my time when I used to work more in the human resources area. And I can assure you that every time being in a corporate world where there's lots of training modules that one has to give, every time when there's a new course that is coming, you have to first, as a trainer, go and attend what we call a train the trainer session. Sometimes it's not for the basic skills or the requirements of being a trainer, but it could also be on the basis of the content of the training that you are going to give. Because we are aspiring to the fact that once a person has attended a training, they must leave that space not only with an acknowledgement or a certificate of attendance, but you want the people to leave the space having acquired certain competences. And those particular competences are not only acquired for the sake of
train the trainer is basically another way of training those who need to take charge.
Exactly, those who need to take charge. And I think equally so, as Ndumi has said, that when you train those people who are taking charge, like training the leaders or training the managers in terms of what their roles are, even though you're not an expert in that particular field, I think we talked about it last time when we talked about facilitation, but you need to be able to know and to have a bit of a tacit knowledge about the matter that is on the table. So obviously, you then need to ensure that the managers are able to acquire, or your learners in the class are able to acquire the knowledge that they will be able to implement and to put into practice when they get back to their workplace. And that
beautiful stuff. Don't lose the thought process, because I want to come back and hook it from there. Ndumi, following on, thank you, Sylvia, for that perspective of train the trainer, because it fits into that. But I want you to also to reflect. George, I'll come back to you. We're talking about coaching and mentoring as, should I call it interventions? Some people say they are not interventions, they're actually more than interventions. But why will it not be right to approach coaching and mentoring as an end in themselves, but rather an integral part of human capital development. I'm just hooking on what Sylvia has touched on. Basically, we seem to be saying that coaches and mentors are never done, right? They need to constantly adjust. But I want you to address this point, which I sometimes come across, that people tend to think that coaching and mentoring they themselves are the end, but they're not. From your perspective, what will be wrong with that approach? When you see them as the ends in themselves and not as as integral to human capital development?
Well, I believe that they are integral to the capacity development process, right? At an individual level. So in the case of employees and groups, actually, group cohesion happens that much better if groups learn and grow together. And I am intrigued by people that say they don't need coaching when they themselves are inspired by people that are constantly being coached. I find that to be a I don't know, a mismatch. It's just a huge misalignment. It's just it lacks this. It doesn't have this. It's either this or that, right? People are just like, oh my goodness.
So I just want to put. I'm not interrupting to stop you from finishing your thought, but I want to address this point where we are saying that there is quite a number of people that actually focus too much on coaching and mentoring and forgetting that actually they are not the end in themselves. Anyone who's a professional, who doesn't matter what professional it is, when coaching comes into their space, is not to make them super knowledgeable about coaching, but is to enable them to continue doing what they are good at.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
It's about the mirror. It's about the mirroring and having somebody that you can bounce ideas off and unpack certain things and explore solutions together, ask questions. I believe in the power of asking shape-shifting questions. And it's not theory. Coaching is not theory. People must implement the things in their real lives and be able to achieve and manifest a different result or a desired result, right? So if coaching with a particular coach is you are constantly attending with coaching sessions, but you are unable to translate that into some sort of ROI, well, then that coaching is not effective for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that that coach is not effective at all. They might not be the right coach for the person, right? So it is not the end all and be all. It is more of I call it a system. I call coaching a system that you put in place so that at the end of 6 months, you are not getting caught by surprise that 6 months has happened and your goals are still on hold. And your desired reality is still like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it's June. Like, what is a surprise? It was May, it was April. So there is no element of surprise. And coaching, I feel that it is that thing that people can use as means of converting that which is in their mind, that which they're feeling paralyzed by, so that they can unlock the things that are paralyzing them so that they can move in a particular direction. But if it's just about arriving at the sessions and talking and not necessarily implement anything, I feel that then that's not efficient, right? Even mentoring in itself, I have found on many levels, mentoring that is unguided, unstructured, not effective, where people meet, get together, but there isn't a clear crystal goal what this mentoring is for. And therefore, there isn't an effective exchange of contacts. It's not deliberate. A person just gives you generic contacts. I mean, if it's not going to be intentional transfer of contacts, linking you with this person, doing actual introductions. So it's a doing process, you know. And some people, I feel like they just want to have the thing as just, I have a coach, but I'm not necessarily ready to implement and try the hard things that can come with coaching. I do believe that coaching actually can be a difficult process for individuals because it's a process that asks you to acknowledge your weaknesses, even, you know, your gaps, how you are wired, etc. So when people are not ready for that, then they might not be able to get to yield these results because they are just fixated by the excitement of, oh, when I'm with Coach Sam, I feel so energized, so excited. But are you implementing? If the implementation doesn't happen, then that's not coaching.
Yeah, we always say that, George, coaching doesn't only happen in the coaching session itself, but in between the sessions, just to support the point raised by Ndumi, that if we talk and we come up with some suggestions for improvement and we do nothing about it in terms of implementation, then we're not going to see any shift. And that speaks to that point. We say it has to really contribute to the human capital development, George.
Yes, Sam. I would say coaching is a catalyst for change. The coach catalyzes change. And obviously, at the end of the day, the success of the coaching process will depend on the level of implementation of whatever actions are agreed upon. And talking to the subject of continuous development with coaches, I would actually go broader and say any profession, whether you're an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, you cannot survive, you cannot sustain a profession if you are not continuously developing. For the simple reason that you will be outstripped by change. And change is happening at such a fast rate now that if you blink, you'll be irrelevant very, very soon. And so when you become irrelevant, no one comes to you for advice because now all of a sudden you're in the Stone Age and everyone is talking AI. And so change is the only constant, and we need to be continuously developing ourselves, not only in the subjects that we understand, but in the spaces we don't. And I'm actually pleased that Ndumi attended the CSI conference, because in my previous life, one of my portfolios was CSI, and it used to be CSR. It was seen as a responsibility, but it's actually an investment. And when you understand the difference between a responsibility and an investment, you understand that with change, the inevitable change, your business must re-strategize and look at these things differently. And so, yeah, as a coach, those are the things you must understand and use to help your clients. But I'm intrigued by one thing. I read a quote last week, and I'm going to read it for Ndumi because I wanted to talk a lot more about that. It's around boundaries. And it's a quote from someone called Jody Picoult. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm sure you know it. And it says, setting boundaries is not a sign of selfishness, but an act of self-respect. And that's a very powerful quote, right? Because culturally, in our Black communities, setting boundaries is actually frowned upon. And therefore, when you take this quote and our culture, how does that sit in your coaching? I'd be interested in finding out from you, because clearly where we are going, it's got to be self-respect. That takes control. But let me hear from you.
Okay. Do I have permission to answer that, Coach Sam?
Yes, and please also define it for us, because it's very interesting.
Great. Lovely quotes. And I agree with it wholeheartedly. And this is true. In fact, if you want to really be okay and almost like reduce the pressure of selfish being versus self-respect, first we need to be okay that sometimes you gotta be selfish. You gotta give yourself permission to be selfish. be selfish with your time. You can be selfish with your IP. I'm that girl. You're not going to pick my brain for fun, for free. It's not going to happen, because I did that for 20 years. And where did it get me? Nowhere, right? And it was nobody's fault. So it's sometimes people call this word selfish. Meanwhile, it's preservation, self-preservation of your time, your money, your energy, what I call TME. And it is so important that TME is guarded with all your might, as in be careful who you bring in to take your time without not wanting to pay what you believe you are worth, George, right? That's a sign of self-respect. And that is why the concept of T's and C's, which is boundaries, companies do that through policies, through the things that you sign, even telephonically. The insurance will say, there are T's and C's that are binding, that will send to you so that we can trade. You literally sign up to agree to their boundaries so that you give them money. You don't call that selfish? Isn't it interesting that you actually think that's acceptable? And as soon as George has boundaries in place, standards, and a certain way that he wants to interact with the world, wants the world to interact with him, we then judge George and we call it selfish, to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Meanwhile, he is just self-preserving so that this self-respect is activated. Self-respect is a doing word. It's not a theory, right? And also the universe, I believe this to be true. The universe treats you like how you treat yourself.
George touched on something very important there, and I think you probably have an answer to that, and that's the culture.
I'm going there now.
Okay.
Yes, I'm touching on that too. I'm saying, why is it permissible for companies to do it, to have T's and C's, and we interact with the companies? So do you see that we've got double standards already, George? Right? To a certain degree, we have double standards because we think it's okay for entities to have boundaries. We see that boundaries are necessary. We sign those T's and C's and we agree. But as soon as it's an individual, we call it selfish. Now let's come back to culture. And let me maybe bring it back to Ubuntu, thing that we spoke about at Weber yesterday. That if you're going to go in blindfolded like this, then Ubuntu is a scam. Because that's what culture is, right? Ubuntu equals culture, right? The two happen next to each other. But how is it then okay for you to deplete your time, your money, your energy, because you lack boundaries? And that is called what? So you're not worthy of your own Ubuntu. You're not allowed to pour into your cup so that you fill it up, so that then you've got more to give to whoever you choose to give to, right? So sitting here as coaches, if we were stressed financially and otherwise, and we're bombarded by clients and we do not have a flow in the way that we work, we wouldn't have capacity to sit here and have this conversation, which is in itself giving back, right? But this is us choosing ourselves right now. Phone away, I don't even know where my phone is right now. I have decided that right now I am here. My time, my energy, my IP, I'm pouring it into this cup called this container that Coach Sam has created. To somebody else right now, I'm appearing as selfish, right? So I cannot make everybody happy every time. But right now, to somebody else, this is an extension of Ubuntu. It's cultural. I'm giving back, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that having boundaries, it's not selfish. The discretion and discernment has to come from you in knowing that it is scientifically impossible to please everybody all the time at the same time. It's just not feasible. What it invites is stress, mental, emotional, physical ailments. They can even rise as a result. arise as a result because you are under pressure to be there for everyone in the name of culture. And also, if you don't respect yourself, I spoke to people. My book is told in stories, short story, feedback, like as in reflection, Ndumi's reflection, short story, Ndumi's reflection, because black text is a spectrum. Why do I mention this? Because none of the people that make up the characters in the book that I wrote that ever said, the person that was on the receiving end of my weak or unhealthy boundaries said, enough is enough. Please close the tap, Ndumi. Please close the tap, Silver. It's never gonna happen. We gotta have the courage to say, this is where I start, this is where I end. I am not allowing this, full stop. And it doesn't have to be fiery. It need not be.
Are you comfortable to share with us the problem statement that landed you into focusing on boundaries coaching?
Oh yes, no, absolutely. I'm okay with that. But I just want to be sure that George feels answered, because I think it was a bit of a mouthful, because this always, like, you are touching me on my studio when as soon as people bring in this, oh, you are being selfish and so on. And it is the one thing that I feel, and I can be judged and canceled for this, people can learn from narcissistic people. The one thing that they are good at is being okay with being selfish, because they don't judge themselves for actually saying, no. They might not be doing it the right way because they've got narcissistic tendencies. They might be abusive, but if there's something that empaths can learn from narcissistic people, is being okay with, I have chosen this. I have chosen this person. If my parents disagree, well, it is what it is. Because then in my culture, oh no, but they don't love him, they don't like him. But who's gonna be married to him? Who's gonna be going on dates with him? Who's gonna be putting up with him if I'm going to be choosing a partner based on what my parents say? Just because they say they don't like him because, I don't know, he's Indian or because he's Chinese. I mean, really. So whether that's culture or not, sometimes we need to be in a space where we can say, well, that's not culture. We are just being culturist. You are being classist. You are being racist.
I'm very glad, Ndumi, that you did not sit at a problem position, but you created a discussion by way of specializing in it as an offering. So I want to put it in that perspective, that all these offerings that we are always following is as a result of a problem statement. That's why I was asking if you're prepared to share that. And then maybe perhaps it's not necessarily a cultural thing, it's just behavior of people. People wanting to make up for whatever they didn't have, and they overcompensate and all those kinds of things. So, George, are you answered before I take away Ndumi from your point that you raised?
No, I'm answered. And really, the reference to culture, as you know, culture is ever changing. It moves with time, and issues around self-respect. And the world now recognizes mental well-being, mental health.
Yes.
In the old days, that wasn't a subject to talk about. And therefore, issues around self-respect and your obligations to community took center stage. We've moved into a world where now you as an individual, your mental well-being is important. And therefore, we must change the narrative around how we look at things. So, but you've answered me in terms of.
And then I want to remind ourselves as well that we're talking as professionals here, as coaches and mentors, although we are being listened to by even the stakeholders and the clients. But I think I want to keep on reminding ourselves that as coaches, we can become victims of our own circumstances. So we need to be alert. You need to be aware. And what capacity do we need to have to be able to help a client that is actually facing this dilemma that Ndumi's offering is actually addressing? because you might not be affected by it, but you might have a client that is actually affected by it. And how do you then make it integral to human capital development? As it almost sounds like we're in a supervision now, George. But that is really what we should do as coaches. Sometimes role play what we are going to be confronted with in real life situation, because we might not want to talk about the topic that Ndumi is addressing, but we know very well that is an issue.
It's actually a very big issue.
Yes, Sam. To the current point that's being discussed, I wanted to just also make a reference to Ndumi's book, The Black Tax. And in terms of boundaries and self-leadership, how do you help your clients find the balance between setting healthy boundaries and then providing the necessary support, especially to their families, communities, especially in the context of Black Tax? But over and above that, one of the points that George had raised, as well as yourself, Ndumi, I'm obviously in the space of engineering, and the president had spoken that the built environment, in particular the engineering space, needs to be professionalized. And in that journey of trying to help that professionalization, we have organizations such as, SAICI and EXA who want to professionalize engineers or engineers who will become professional. And in that space, you often find, firstly, a mix or a misconstrued understanding of what a mentor is and what a coach is, and they use it interchangeably. And then on top of that, one of the aspects that you mentioned, that you don't necessarily need to be an expert in the context of the area where you, or the person that you're coaching. But in the engineering space, you often will find your coach / mentor, because they often misconstrue the two, often is an engineer themselves. And the focus is usually on the technical aspect. And as we've said, cultures evolve. And if you look at culture as a bigger sense, that if we looked at a professional area of engineering, engineers need to not only look at a technical solution anymore, they need to look at how does that solution integrate into the communities, how does it impact our future, how does it involve itself with the environment. So I just wanted to also then add that dimension to the question that I had asked, in terms of, how do you help your clients with regards to finding balance between setting healthy boundaries and then providing necessary support to the families, especially the communities as well. Thanks.
Thanks for that question. It's quite multi-layered, but I'll start with the one referring to the supporting clients when they are having to set boundaries in any circumstance. But let's use Black Tax as an example. Considering that I've written a book around it, etc. So the starting point for me is making people aware that not talking about Black Tax, let's start there, with their families, is causing a division between them and their families. It's causing what I call an artificial relationship, because they're not being transparent about their status quo around money. People don't necessarily need to be sharing the precise amount that they're earning, maybe their net or something like that. No, but people can be honest, can be transparent about the amount of debt they've got, how much they're earning. Like, nobody will die if somebody said, actually, I know that I make it look cute. I know that I carry myself like I've got money, but my salary is only X amount. Because people put themselves in the situation whereby they invite the request for money because they project the perception that they have the money, right? And it doesn't mean that the way that we dress and the cars we drive now entitles people to our purse. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying the starting point is having a transparent, loving, compassionate conversation with our parents about our situation, how we feel about the circumstances that we are in. And then also speaking about our financial goals for ourselves and for the family. Because by doing that, then it means we're including the family. The question, I always say, I would like to do things differently so that we can tell a different money story for this family, so that we can end the cycle of poverty or end the cycle of black tax in this family. So if I do things differently, I'm not doing it differently to punish my family. I'm doing it differently so that I've got more to give later, but in a way that is structured, right? So that's almost like the back end, or that comes in with the conversation of black tax, maybe the backdrop. But coming to how I support the people that I coach, well, first of all, we do, if I may say, Davesh, do a role play, because people cry on these coaching calls when they are devastated, feeling that they are cornered. They need to either speak to their father, their mother. They are terrified, so scared. So we then practice the language that is loving, compassionate, understanding, non-accusatory. Because if I came to my mom and I said, you know, I've been working for 20 years and you, mommy, has made me broke. Look at me. I am struggling because you are just such a terrible person. This will not take us forward. I say the formula is truth plus love minus rightness equals a safe environment for having a healthy and loving conversation in terms of boundaries, whether it's for black text or any other thing for that matter. It's truth plus love minus rightness. By rightness, I mean being committed to proving the other person to be wrong. So if we commit to this formula, it's almost like we're saying, I know that I can say, I know that I've made some wrong decisions. I own up to it. So I help them with the accountability language, also help them with the empowered language. Not, I think. No, I have looked at my finances and I am disappointed at myself that 20 years later, I don't have sufficient savings. I don't have sufficient investments. Taking full accountability. That's a starting point. And furthermore, it is that the conversation, when it is happening, it is to not expect immediate understanding. Because if we have that expectation, then it means the level of disappointment might be great or devastating when the parent is not understanding of, oh, wow, so Devesh now suddenly has boundaries. Now that he's gone and done AI, now that he's appearing on these channels, on these online streets, right? So now you're untouchable. Now you are telling us about boundaries. Wow. Wow, Devesh, like, talk about wow, right? So do you see how it can be a lot for our parents? So we've been processing it. We are in these conversations, we are learning and so on. So we've got, I can come to you, I can come to George to process the thing for a good 2-3 months before I have the conversation. So I always say it is advisable to allow the parents, family, time and space to process what you are talking about in as far as communicating the new boundary. Then the third thing is to also express that this is about us as a family. It's about me, my finances, and of course, this is so that I am able to further help. The X amount, maybe before you were doing 10,000 per month. I know people that actually pay as much as 10,000 rand towards helping siblings, this and that. And maybe now the line item is being reduced to 5,000. So the person might not necessarily be saying no, but the person they're saying they will be doing it differently. But if they stick to truth, being honest about how they feel, about their views about the situation, and also being honest about their financial goals. Because some people don't want to have financial freedom. They're okay being in debt. They just want to be dodging calls the rest of their lives. So then communicate that to the family. This is my truth. But that with that add love, minusing rightness. In other words, not accusing. Then we have this conversation that is saying, this is the decision that I've taken. This is how I see this helping me, so that it enables me, so that in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, I'm not someone else's black tax. So the support structure, Devesh, happens a lot before, because people, it's not that they don't know their boundaries. It's that they're scared to communicate the boundaries because they don't have the tools to communicate. So what needs to change is the language that they're using, the intention, not to accuse, but more the intention to build and to express the newly found boundary. And the last support structure is being patient. Being patient and being on a path of the individual wanting to have a healthy relationship with money. Because we cannot think that we are not going to talk about black tax, but we're going to talk about money. We're not going to talk about money, not talk about black tax, when these things are almost intertwined, right? So it's important that a person is available to have the conversation of saying, I am now ready to do things differently. I want to help in this and this and that fashion. It must be precise and clear. So I'm not saying people must not help.
How can we broaden this topic beyond just money? Because for me, this is bigger than money. And also share with us, how do you see it disrupting the human capital development or progress in terms of one's growth in wherever they might be professionally?
So beyond
with
money,
your permission, Sam,
Yes.
Can I just ask, if the listener is sitting in the Philippines, how should they understand black tax? What is it?
Black tax is the responsibility that us black people, I can talk for us, inherit from our parents, because our parents could not participate actively in the economy. So we inherited a deficit. Our parents didn't have money to talk to us about. So that's why we don't know about money. That's why that's why there's a show called I Blew It.
And by virtue of being their child, you take responsibility.
Exactly. So there's an expectation. There's almost like a cultural context and an expectation that, well, you are my child, therefore I raised you, so you must help me. To some degree, this is understandable. I get it. It's the point that I was about to make before you interjected, Sam, was that so, for example, getting into debt to renovate your mother's house, let's just say that. What about doing it differently, saving money so that you are not getting into, because debt is expensive in South Africa. Instead of getting a loan, rather save money for an X amount of months and then still do the thing that you want to do. Another thing is that people don't see how committed they are to instant gratification. So sometimes the issue is not a money problem. It's a when problem. It's more of we don't have delayed gratification. But I want to go back to your question, Sam, about how does this expand to human development, capacity development? It so absolutely does, because boundaries is the starting point of understanding yourself. Because George's boundaries are different to Davesh's, that Davesh's are different to Sylvia's and different to mine, because each and every one of us has different needs, wants, thoughts, and feelings about a particular thing, about how life should look like, about how we want to be treated in a relationship, at work, and what we believe we deserve. And by virtue of us being different in all these things, in the needs, the wants, the thoughts and feelings or desires, it means essentially that our capacity to achieve any form of progress hinges on our capacity to set healthy boundaries. Discipline is impossible when you don't have boundaries. Leaders in those corporate streets that cannot make decisions because they lack self-awareness and boundaries. I've seen so many of them. It is impossible to make effective decisions because you lack self-awareness. There's confusion. It's just like, yeah, let's not. Half the time, people that are on the other side of corporate are chasing people for things that cannot decide whether they want the thing or not. It's because they're lacking the self-awareness to say, actually, I do not need this. My team does not need this. Therefore, this is what I need to do. So personal development and self-awareness and decision-making, discipline, progressing in the direction of self-leadership, in the direction of our goals, is virtually impossible without boundaries, because the three resources, time, money, and energy, it's almost like a wheel that enables the goals to take effect. So if you cannot guard these three things using boundaries, healthy boundaries, then it's easy for you to not be able to achieve what you want in life. Because you will be judging yourself for feeling like how you are feeling. You will be projecting, you'll be feeling shame, feeling guilt, and all of these other things, because there isn't a self-awareness of, I have decided I want to write a book. That decision means adjustments must happen in my life. People that are in my life need to understand. I need to help them understand that my level of availability is not going to be the same.
Actually, yeah, sorry.
Adjustments have to be made so that we can move in the direction of the things that we say we want. And so boundaries become, you called it an intervention, and you said we said we mustn't call it an intervention. So I call it a system. So when I was writing, there was no alcohol in my house. Zero. As a strategy that I need to be in control of my morning. And consuming any form of alcohol compromises the chances of me being able to do that. And I had to be very particular about how early I go to bed, right? But now somebody's thinking, oh, but these boundaries don't affect other people. No, it does. Because how many times then do you have to say no to people that want to, oh, let's go out, let's finish late. But I'm authoring, I'm waking up at 3 a.m., at 4 a.m. So learning to say no is a big part of setting healthy boundaries. But what was it driven by? This goal to write and finish this book.
Actual fact, Sylvia, I was very happy when I saw the title of the book and black text or text came number last in the sequence of weights in the title of the book, because I want to believe that it is actually a choice. My uncle used to say, and I will say it in my language, Sylvia will translate. It says, sekata, skadi. I don't know how you translate that. So basically what it means, if I may try, and Sylvia will help me there, it's a choice to provide a long-lasting solution to a problem that by virtue of birth, you cannot avoid. So, and he had his own way of addressing this dilemma of being responsible for problems that you actually inherited by virtue of birth. So he says that walk away from them in a way of providing lasting solution, because if you don't do that, you're going to be dragged back into it. Sylvia.
Absolutely. Is there a question to me?
Yeah, I want Sylvia just to reflect from a cultural perspective.
Yeah.
We can come back to you to tell us if it's still valid for your in terms of your book and your coaching.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Coach Tim. Actually, I was intrigued more when Divesh came into to ask the question, of the book, in relating to what one would like, because that's where I wanted to come in, Ndumi. Coach Sima, maybe let me first start in what you have just indicated in terms of the cultural matters, and I'm glad that Ndumi, having written this book and, being born and bred, as you said, from KZN, obviously a lot of culture richness, in terms of how we have been brought up. And I think, as Coach Sima has said, we come from the background that is mostly enriched in terms of culture, how you get to be brought up, which affects your behavioral reactions, when you continue in your life. So for me, when I listen to what you've been saying, Coach Sima said, how then, in terms of that, of the culture, the example that he has made, that, by not, you continue to be in a perpetual type of a challenge if you are not, in any sense, bringing up a solution that will actually be a lifelong type of a solution. And I was trying to link this back when Divesh asked the question in terms of when one writes a book, or maybe not necessarily writes a book, but the learning lesson, when we talk about the lifelong learning and relating it to the issue of the black text, I've been tossing it around in my head, back to what Coach is saying about the culture, because we sit and we expose. We talk about this a lot of time, and I think it's because maybe sometimes we are entangled in that very situation where you're calling that we making a choice of living into there. There's a term that people are using to say, I visited one of the colleagues that I worked with for quite a while, and he's kind of retired. And when I got there, we were having a conversation, and we found ourselves where she was explaining to me that we are what is called the sandwich generation. And with the sandwich generation, what it meant is that we got to be brought up, or we lived in the era of where the culture was. Our parents basically were not, as you say, very much economically active, obviously based on the times of where the entire type of living in our country was, and now amidst all those, they still manage to kind of get us educated, because the intention was that you have to be much better, into what, or the type of the life that we have lived. So yes, we got educated. We actually are now better into that. But now, at the same time, here we are parents. We studied, we finished school, we graduated, we worked, and we started families. But we are now again caught up in another era where we have the economy being an inverted triangle now, where your children that you have brought up, that you have educated yourself, just like our parents did, they are not in a position to find jobs, because of what we are facing. So that very generation is back again, having to take care and, ensure the means of this generation of the people. So that makes us this sandwich generation. It was about our parents, which we tried to say, let's bring them back into that. And now it's about the kids that you have brought up and thinking that you are moving them into that. And I want to relate it back, as I wanted you to just ask, maybe explain it to me. Because and I'm sorry, Ndumi, we are now into this situation. We posing this question, so I want you to assist us with these answers. But I'm sure you will accept, because as I listen to you answering all these questions, it's, they always say a reward for a good problem solver is to give them more problems, to actually solve. But yes, that's one of the notion, and I'm trying to relate to, if we talk about human capital development, a lifelong lesson, lifelong learning, it's a solution that you are bringing to saying it has to be a solution that one can implement, that will bring a long-lasting resolve, rather than something that will just solve a situation now, and maybe that issue of the sandwich generation that actually come into being.
Okay. So what's the question?
Yeah. So I want you to kind of indicate to me, in terms of when we talk of the lifelong learning in the human development, and at the same time, I want you to relate it back to me in terms of the black text in the sandwich approach.
Okay.
Sandwich generation, yeah.
So coming back to the lifelong learning, I mentioned earlier delayed gratification, right? We live in a society where everything is about instantism, 2-minute noodles, microwave food, etc. Everything is happening now. You want a credit card, you can literally just go into an app and get credits approved right now, right? So some of the things that are causing this challenge around this black text story are not really about money, but are more about the discipline and the things that we've normalized. We've normalized debt. We've normalized opulence unnecessarily. I mean, look at our funerals. Really? Do we need all the expenses that come with our funerals, right? We are excessive. We are committed to consumerism. We do not see that we are on the what can I call it? We are on the extreme end of the spectrum in terms of the economy. We're on the opposite end. We are not manufacturers, we're not makers, we're not creators, we are consumers, we are spenders, right? So the lifelong learning is right there. Let's minimize consumerism. Let's minimize commitment and oversight around debt. Let's be clear about what it is that, why do we do what we do? Why don't we do what we don't do? Why do we spend money in certain areas and why don't we spend money in certain areas? What is the focal point? How many people do you know that they say they value education, but their kids do not go to the schools that tell you that they actually value education? Their cars will indicate that they value looking rich versus being rich, right? So here lies the lifelong learning. We have to unlearn, we have to unbelieve that for me to be worthy of being on these platforms, I must be parking a Range Rover outside, right? And that I cannot say no to my kids in saying, well, actually, if you want this and that, I can get it for you in June. Is it possible that you can save? Then if you save 1,000 Rand, I'll multiply that by 2. That's lifelong learning that parents need to learn so that they can extend it to their kids. So when we do not do differently but want different results, who are we lying to? You know what I mean? So this isn't about money. Instant gratification has got nothing to do with money. Discipline to save got nothing to do with money, because I know people who earn 100K per month. They almost lost their house. You see how that's got nothing to do with money, but it's got to do with the relationship with money. And of course, why is it that we don't have a healthy relationship with money? Because we never had it at home. for it to be an entity. Money was never a stakeholder for Black people, except a select few that ran shops and businesses, etc. So we do not have a healthy relationship with money. And there, again, another point for us to learn that we need to develop an active, proactive, loving, healthy relationship with money. You say, money is my best friend. She finds me wherever I am. And when she comes, I preserve her, because if I do not, she turns around, she's just like, Ndumi is abusive, and she leaves. Right? So these are all the things that need to be learned as lifelong learning around the issue of how we interact with money. Because we cannot separate money from Black text, essentially, to a certain degree. Now, coming back to your second part of the question was around the issue of how then do we help, which is almost like an extension of Davesh's question, right? How then do we juxtapose this with us being a sandwich generation, right? So being a sandwich generation, in my view, the sandwich need not be expensive. You cannot have an expensive mom and you are an expensive self and your kids are living an expensive life. So again, there the issue is not money. You are not having the right conversations with your parents, with your siblings, with yourself, with your kids. So the sandwich, instead of it being a big multiplied burger like this, like an American style, it can be compressed into being something minimized. All the people that I've met during the writing of this book who are not paying Black tax, their parents delayed gratification. They did something differently. I've met them, professionals working in the streets of Johannesburg. Black people that are paying Black tax because their parents moved differently. They were willing to say, I'm going to delay maybe moving to the suburbs. I'm going to delay living lavishly. I'm going to delay buying new clothes every day. My mom was such a person. She was known in Zulu as Ungoqo, the stingy one. She's 70. She's self-sufficient. Because she did something differently when she was younger. So she's having the benefit now. I'm having the benefit of that at 40-something. I don't have the pressure to do things for my mom. Because
it's for these reasons, and differently.
Sorry?
So, yeah. Now, I wanted to support some of the points you've raised. I said it's for these reasons why I believe very strongly that coaching and mentoring is coaches and mentors have a great opportunity actually to bring about transformation in a confidential spaces when they have conversations with their clients. That's why I keep on saying, let's look at it from the point of view of us being coaches and mentors. We have the opportunity to engage with those who come to us and say, I'm overwhelmed. Because if you sit on the other side of being the one who is actually having to deal with this, and you don't see yourself as a coach and mentor, it can be very gloomy. You could feel very defeated. But I don't think as coaches and mentors, we are defeated. We have a role to play to help people. Remember, when you're sitting with your client, you are not sitting on a public platform. You're sitting in a confidential space, and you have the opportunity to actually help the client to deal with the challenges they are faced with, which many of them might not even be properly located if you use the other public's perspective. For instance, imagine sitting in a boardroom, coaching an executive, and he says, look, I might be the executive here, but I have this black text that is pulling me back, and I don't know what to do, and that's why I don't really step up to what I'm expected to become. Now it's a conversation. At that point, it's not about judging, it's not about sharing, saying your views, it's about engaging with that person, creating the capacity. But I want us to move away now, if you have permission, colleagues, to address other aspects of coaches and mentors' role in empowering human capital development. I'm not saying human resources, it's human capital development. And I think people might be wondering why I brought Ndumi here. It speaks to the next point I wanted to address, to say that we are holding this series because this is the series for the practitioners, people who are charged with the responsibility to capacitate others. And these are the coaches and mentors, and your client could be an engineer, it could be an artist, it could be entrepreneur, it could be anybody. And we are saying that as coaches and mentors, we're coming together on the third Tuesday. We are having conversation with ourselves, but we are mindful of the fact that we are enlightening a broader stakeholder groupings. But we must continue focusing on what is our role in this process of capacitating human capital development. For that, I want you to share with me if you have other ways you want to suggest of actually growing this objective. Let me just read what I've said here. I said, our objective in running this series is partnering with seasoned and up-and-coming coaches and mentors in their development and growth journeys. And I'm not, now, George, I'm not talking credentialing, qualification. I'm talking people who are really charged with the responsibility just to do this. And then we can talk about them becoming qualified and great credentialing, because now they're becoming professionals. So I want Ndumi to share with me if she has any other ways she wants to suggest as practitioners how we can actually do and grow this responsibility or this role that we are playing. And you, one of those that have been invited to add to this think tank, if you like.
So are you referring specifically to how we can structure our coaching businesses, or you mean in terms of our coaching content?
No. I'm saying that we invite people every third Tuesday who are saying they are coaches and they are mentors to get together and to reflect, to say, how can we contribute to building capacity and helping people to grow from a human capital perspective? Now, I'm saying, having said that, just thinking widely and broadly, is there any other better way you think we can do this? I'm asking perhaps an obvious question, but I just want us to reflect on that. How coaches and mentors can collaborate and get together to create more, make more impact. For instance, the point that Divesh was raising is a reality. Somebody is technically strong, is capable as an engineer, but is facing challenges got nothing to do with engineering. They have to do with other aspects of existence.
Yes, yeah.
And we can't leave them as an engineer, he must know better, let him fix it. Tomorrow he becomes a CEO, the engineering doesn't make him a good CEO. It's these other things that they don't even form part of a syllabus of an engineering course. And that's where lifelong learning becomes a reality and relevance. And other societies do it better than us. And I'm saying, how best can we do? Not to stop learning when we get the certificate and degree, or when we get promoted and think, I'm done, I'm made. And the reality is, we can't, as George said, we can't do without lifelong learning. So I'm asking you to help us brainstorm over and above this getting together every third Sunday, how else we can do it, because there must be much better ways out there, and we can incorporate it into our effort.
Well, I think one of the ways maybe could be also, I'm sure it's not even, a breakthrough idea. It's kind of obvious to engage HR executives around this. I mean, now there's people in development. There are many, departments that they call it, but let's call it HR for lack of a better word. People in culture. So I think organizations think that they can leave culture to chance. And in my view, it's the biggest risk they're taking. It's like playing with fire, because culture within an organization is not the walls. When a person says, I left an environment that was toxic, they're not talking about the picture on the wall here. They're talking about the individuals in this room, right? So I feel that if we can encourage more HR practitioners to have an agency around a proactive and progressive culture, a learning culture, not just we are training. No, if I say culture, I mean really having active daily way of life, not just going to the classroom and really bringing in coaching elements and teachings into the day-to-day of the running of the business. If you can help them connect the dots, that the more self-awareness that exists within the employees, the better the output, the better the productivity, the better the team cohesion, the better the questions, the better the, you know, the benefit is that much more. So in my view, managing culture is a strategic and more of a unique selling point, because it cannot be replicated. You cannot cut and paste it, right? So if we can get them to understand that, so that they've got the agency to actually incorporate, normalize coaching, then we would be doing something, we'll be doing God's work. Because I feel that this country needs a culture of learning. So if you go into listening tools right now and you check what people are searching for, it's not personal development. It's not personal development. People don't see the link between their need for them to develop themselves personally and for them to achieve the things that they want. They don't see the link. They want magical things. So I feel that this platform should be advocating for the truth that there isn't an easy way other than through doing the thing, looking at yourself and saying, me, I want this. What am I going to do about it?
Do you think it will help to invite HR practitioners to this platform and discuss the role?
Yes, I think so. I think it will, even if it's just one a month at different levels. Because if HR practitioners don't see the link, then it means that makes it much more difficult for people to get in and sell coaching services, right? And more so for black coaches. But Devesh asked about, engineers and so on, and I've dealt with engineers that have been put in situations where now they're not. Please mute yourself, Sylvia. Thank you. Where now engineers were client interfacing. They now had targets. One of my clients in Zambia had this very challenge that you were raising earlier. And we had to go and dig deep and have real understanding of why they are feeling that this is impossible for them and where they can meet this process halfway, right? Because for them, it was just like, no, I must sit behind this machine and I must just do this and do that. And it was necessary for HR to see that the personal development journey needs to plug in here so that the person can access their confidence, because everybody has the confidence. They just don't know how to access it. And everyone has a certain level of, I can put myself over here and they can adjust to the situation and say, I actually am equal to the situation. I can actually look at it in the eye. But if you still hold false beliefs of smallness, of shame, then you are not going to be able to change. So there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done. So it's not training. We did not put them through training of closing a deal. We went through a coaching journey of saying, these may be the things that may need to be unlearned. This is how you unlearn them. This is almost like uninstall software so that we can then put new software that affirms the things that enables the technical person to access this part of them that is more empowered. So if HR does not see this link, it makes our job harder, in my view, but it also makes it harder for the employees in the organization when they suggest that they need coaching.
Yeah, one of yes, George.
I wanted to add my 2 cents worth around culture in organizations, because that's a big subject. And having been in corporate myself for 23 years, I can attest to the fact that the key to culture change Yes, HR plays a part, but it's the CEO. The culture of an organization is determined by the behavior and the championship, leadership of the CEO. And can I just also say that the majority, well, let me not say majority, because then people will say, what study are you talking about? A lot of CEOs belong to the culture of, let me put it that their emotional intelligence levels are low. Let me put it that way. And they are driven by the numbers only. If it's not adding up, get rid of these people. Get rid. And so my experience has been that the driver of getting that to happen has always been, how do we convince a CEO to adopt a culture that is empathetic, that understands people, that how do we get them to do that? Because when you start there, you can get that, because people learn from seeing. You can say whatever you want to say, but if they see the boss as a narcissist, well, that's the culture that's going to pivot, right? And there's a lot of organizations, let me tell you, with narcissist bosses, and the culture in there is toxic.
Toxic.
And so I think what I would like to say is, in addition to HR, we would want actually to get people to talk about what do we want to see in our organizations, and then work towards that. And the best the best success in culture change is going one piece at a time, isn't it? We will target one thing, and then we will go. We'll target the next thing, and then we'll go until it becomes a habit. Because you can't succeed as a business with a terrible culture. You can for a period, but it's not sustainable. If you want sustainability, you want to create a culture that will create sustainable businesses. I thought I'll just add my 2 cents worth of it, because I'm quite passionate about the issue of culture and how we get CEOs because he's a great engineer, and we do nothing about getting him to understand the value of the people who bring about the success of the business.
Did we address some of the issues you raised earlier on, Divesh, in terms of mentoring and coaching for the engineering sector?
Yes, Sam, they have been addressed to an extent. I just wanted to refer to the point that you had raised and the question that you had posed also to Ndumi. And in terms of what can we do, especially with platforms like these and the opportunities towards improving the abilities of coaches and the value propositions of coaches and mentors towards the greater good. My perspective of, especially with today's show and with the book that Ndumi has written, and some of the discussions we've had tonight when we speak of black tax, the way I see it is holistically, it's a different framework which we are packaging under the theme of black tax. And of course, that's got to focus in terms of what it means. But within that itself, if we look at what is the value and how can we apply it to other scenarios or context, when Ndumi is talking of black tax, she's talking about the psychological impacts, the emotional impacts. How does that affect your self-esteem, your mental health, your personal goals? How do you set boundaries within your family, community members? Improvement of relationships. How do you improve communication? How do you meet the expectations? How do you maintain that healthy relationships? How do you manage your financial freedom or strive towards financial freedom? So lots of different elements. And the way I see it is that by developing these different frameworks, And a lot of the themes that I've mentioned tonight is themes that we've dealt with in previous shows with other frameworks as well, which self-leadership gurus have been a part of our shows in the past. So I think these kinds of shows, if we come up with the new dynamic and interesting frameworks to capture a new audience and be able to transmit our messaging in a different package, i.e., these frameworks, such as how Ndumi deals with black tax, it's much broader than just the traditional concept of local black tax. And again, in terms of the point or the question that George had raised earlier on, with regards to being able to convey to viewers and listeners out there who may not be familiar with what black tax is, I just wanted to also share that black tax is not only amongst the African community. And although it's prevalent in African communities due to the historical and socio-economic factors, in those factors coexist in other cultures and communities as well, especially where there is a strong sense of family obligation and the need for financial support. So that although the black tax specifically highlights the unique experiences and challenges faced by South Africans or black individuals to that matter, due to the systemic injustices and historical disadvantages that our communities and individuals have gone through, it is really a concept which is also in other communities, and it should then resonate with our viewers from other parts of the world. And my point really is that one of the aspects which Ndumi really has brought to our show tonight, the different framework for me of how to actually develop oneself, self-leadership, but the lens has been placed on the concept of black tax. And that black tax concept is not a unique one just to South Africa or Africa, but it's something that can be involved in other communities. Thank you, sir.
Beautiful.
I agree, definitely. I agree, Davesh. When I was researching the book, I came across people from all over the world that reported in Asia, in America, across the globe, that reported to have challenges in varying degrees. The intention for me, I think, Sam did ask this question, but we didn't get to answering it about the problem statement for the book. It was the realization how much pressure people had to complain about black tax. During COVID, we were keyboard warriors, people complaining and to each other, of which in the absence of COVID, it's done over drinks, at dinners, at breakfast, at this with friends. And I felt that there was a need for families to have this conversation so that rather use this existing problem, we've got it, it's here. And it's not going anywhere. And that is why I'm advocating that we do it differently. We use this actual issue to build the family fiber instead of making it a thing that is dividing us. Because more than 3 people that I've written about in the book, someone who's been paying black tax since 1987 and is still working, and he calculated that which he could calculate to about 2.5 million rands. The regret is not the 2.5 million. The upset is in the, why was there no one to protect me when I was looking after my sister's kids, my siblings' children, when I did not have a child? Like at some point, he was looking after 16 people, 16 siblings, kids, right? Why? Because he has a job. He's got that big responsibility. So, and when in 2017, after both parents had passed, he then said he's passing on the baton to somebody else, because he started doing black tax when he was an intern. Now he was a C-suite level person. And he said, I'm passing on the baton and I want to see maybe somebody else's interventions will be better than mine. The family fell apart because the thing that had kept them together was the transactions, the request for money. There were never any honest, therapeutic, compassionate conversations. Thoughts and feelings were never shared. So the relationship has actually crumbled because they ignored the important factor that it is necessary for them to talk about these issues. So that's more like the backdrop of where that was coming from. But yeah.
Thank you so much. You have given me a strong foundation to continue this conversation, because we needed that, because that is fundamental, because it's a reality, it's a fact, and I think it's a discussion that needs to continue, because I'm sure there are the beneficiaries of black text that will look at it differently.
Absolutely. And like I'm saying, it's I'm not saying people should not do black text. I'm saying someone actually had commented and said that I'm worried about our kids who are so different and their approach to issues is so different too. Our kids are not going to black text us. They are born with boundaries. They are born knowing how they feel. Yeah. They don't need Ndumi to teach them how to listen to the feeling, right? So if we think that we are just going to help and deplete ourselves completely and operate from an empty cup, then we have a thing coming that in 10, 15, 20 years time, there will be no resources for us to go back to, right? So the issue is not that people should not help. It's how they do the helping. How can I love you and I love me at the same time? How can I help my family in a way that I'm not enabling someone else to sit and not do anything with their lives? How can I deal with this sense of entitlement that my mind is everybody's mind, right? So it's those type of conversations that I'm advocating for.
Yeah, absolutely. Conversation started, it must be sustained, and it should continue, because it's necessary. I want you to look at the checking out, and there are a few pointers that I want us to, if you don't mind, just reflect on that as you check out. Checking out meaning that give us your own summary of what you think we have achieved and what you're taking away from this conversation, and what do you think should be done in sustaining this conversation. Obviously, we defaulted into talking about black text because of the book that you have written, boundaries that you have written, which suggests that it is a valuable book to maybe to even do a review on it and reflect on the real stories addressing. But I want us to think about how, as coaches and mentors, can we hold, and that's your checking out statement, if you don't mind. How, as coaches and mentors, can we remain valuable thinking partners of our clients on these issues, and how do we hold them accountable and ourselves accountable? And then, of course, I like talking about the perspective, the purpose, and the process. And I think the perspective of a black candidate or a black coachee has black text in it. You know, and it might be subtle. It might even be denied. And as a coach, you must be able to pick it up when it comes out. And I say, let me not say black text, but I'm talking about boundaries, the inability to set boundaries because of your cultural background. That's the perspective. And if you listen to me talking, you can even see that there's an element of me being held by what I grew up knowing, but that's not the perfect. Doesn't mean it's a perfect, doesn't mean the best. But it might be a reason why maybe in certain areas I'm held back. And then, of course, the purpose is what is important as coaches and mentors. You can't coach and mentor on everything. Sometimes you have to ring fence the certain things, or you need to take certain things out of context so that you can make progress. It doesn't mean that you should not ignore what the client is bringing over. If you have a client that brings 101 things, you need to be able to help them set a target for your interaction with them. And I'm sure even in the discussion about setting boundaries, you can't set boundaries about everything at once. Maybe it's a behavioralist rather than task. And then lastly, when you have then addressed the perspective, that's what the person bring with into a conversation, be either coaching and mentoring, and then you have figured out where they best can go, then the real coaching happens, which many people call coaching is the process. And I always say that the process is actually just the sessions, month in, month out. It's not coaching. It's one of the three great pillars of coaching. And often as coaches and mentors, we forget these two extremes. We focus on enjoying the sessions, setting sessions, talking, but we forget that there are these two extremes. If we don't bring them into context, we are not able to make meaningful impact of our coaching sessions. That's if you don't mind, I know it's a big ask, but please let's respect time. We left with 15 minutes. Even if you don't address those, at least I've raised them. You'll reflect on them on your own and you reflect on the show itself. But definitely it's not the last time we had Ndumi here. Over to you, colleagues, and you can check out and reflect. I see George is deep in thinking because this is the stuff he deals with on a regular basis. Over to you, George.
Yeah, this has been quite exciting. And to me, I think this is part one of a 5-part series, I think. We need to keep talking around this. I don't know whether you have videos of around the black text topic. I would sincerely suggest that do something to help people out there. I know you coach executives, you coach people, but there is something in there that you are so good at that I would love to see people benefiting from it, because you speak on the subject with such passion and you're very clear about it. So if you're not doing it yet, I don't know, some road show, whatever it is, something that is going to talk about this subject, because trust me, many of us are struggling with it. But hey, we are too big to go out there and say, hey, Ndumi, listen, this is the story. So we suffer quietly along. And so a lot of guys would benefit from that. So that's my first one. I really, as I say, part 1, part 2, part 3. Maybe part 3, we talk about the book and the stuff, but that about the education. Will it give you money immediately? I don't know. But it's something that's so, so important. Right. How can we help? Your suggestion about HR is so important, because Sam and I and Devesh, we actually used to have HR executives on the show, and we would interview them about what's happening in their businesses, etc., etc., etc. So it would just be an extension. Bring them back, folks. Let's talk about the culture in your businesses. And then they can go influence their CEOs and their excos and what. But it's a road that we can, go back on, because we've done it before. So, and I would say maybe Sam, let's think about that. And Jevesh and I used to interview CEOs and general managers around that. That's another opportunity to sow a seed around culture, because you're absolutely right. To get these things to happen, get the culture right. I talk a lot, as you can see. So I'm going to stop now and say, Sam, this is a subject that we need to revisit. It's so powerful, because it's affecting many Black people who don't, not so much don't have a voice, whose hands are shackled by our culture, in not coming out and say, hey, this is the way things should be done. And then it's not about not supporting. It's about reimagining a way of supporting.
Wow, beautiful one. Thanks, George. Divesh, are you?
Yes, thank you, Sam. Just before I give my my checkout, I just wanted to add to what George was saying. One of the critical elements within the value chain that has a huge impact in terms of corporate culture is the board. Board of directors definitely influences, and I think it's a more manageable group to get to share skills, knowledge, so that they can disseminate it into an organization than you would if you were to go to HR. I think the board has a more tangible level or lever rather to change culture in an organization. And in terms of my takeaways, we must remember investing in yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. It's the fuel that empowers you to lead, to inspire, and to create a meaningful impact in the lives of others. And until next time, as we do say so in most of our shows at Kobetsa, we must keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose. The world needs your unique light. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Divesh. So profound. Sylvia?
Yes, thank you. Thank you again, Ndumi. I think quite a lot that is been said. For me, very mouthful. I want to link on the fact of, and maybe covering on what both Divesh and George has said in terms of the future and the intents of the session. One looks at when we are more in looking into the corporate world, and I think having spent so much time in the corporate world and in an area where you have to do the convincing to what one will define as the line managers, and maybe even to Divesh, in terms of the engineers in the sphere of work. And one looks at how you even structured the topic, Coach Zimmer. We're talking human capital development, and the lifelong learning. To me, the take home, on this whole issue is basically indicating when we go back to the book, because I think the minute one listens to the term black tax, we are all inclined to the issue of money and finances. And I just appreciated, in terms of you emphasizing to the fact that, we need to look at the issues of the gratification and the likes, and the fact that we're talking human resources development as a lifelong learning. Maybe to actually emphasize the issue of the personal goal and to kind of redefine your path, looking at the perspective of how we view this. Because to me, I'm sitting here now and I'm yearning to actually find your book, and I would like to really go through it and understand and read it, because it will give me such a good perspective in terms of, again, still mentoring and having younger people and having all this just coming through in a day-to-day perspective. But the most important thing, as I really need to say, is that yes, it's a lifelong learning, and let us move away from the issue of thinking of black tax as only referring to the issues of finances and money. The emphasis, as it has been put here, it brings a whole lot of learning into it. And I really will take that home with me. And thank you for the experience that is shared with us. And thanks to my co-hosts, as I say, we always learn from the experts in this field. Thanks, Coach Zimmer, for the topics, very much intriguing in terms of the development of the human capital. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I certainly want a copy of mine as well, copy for myself as well, to read the book. But before you say your last words and share with the viewers how they get hold of you. I just want to acknowledge some inputs from the colleagues in the chat box. You did read the one from Piara Jakes Mabonya, who was talking about how exciting it is. It's his home. He says he gets goosebumps when he hears about the sandwich generation, and worried about kids who are so different. And then, of course, Coach Nomvuyo Bengane, I did promise to bring her on board. I'm going to talk to her after this. She needs to come on board. So true. We are a sandwich generation. Very true. Lots to learn and learn. Interesting. You call it delayed gratification. It is quite similar to what I call sacrificial love. And then she said, interesting, and said goodbye. She had to go off. And then lastly, from Jakes Mabonya again, I think you are so right, Ndumi. We feel so guilty when we cannot help, especially us, the sandwich generations. I know young people are blatantly, and my kids tell me all the time that they don't have poor parents and they don't owe anyone help. Yeah, you see the conversation brings different views, and this is healthy because we are talking. Ndumi, I give you and thanks for starting the discussion. And as George said, it's definitely part one of the many parts. You and I will discuss, of course, depending on your availability. But make sure that you post the how people get the book on LinkedIn, where we streaming this conversation, so that people can get it and also call you to come and take them through the book. But last words from yourself. I hope you've taken something from this conversation, and of course, how do we get a hold of you?
Before I get to how people can get hold of me, I just want to say thank you for the invitation. It's been awesome, engaging, and just unpacking the spectrum of coaching, because it is very much a spectrum, and capacity development is a thing, lifelong learning, which is a theme that kept on coming out throughout the 2-hour session. And in response to George about videos, I do not have any videos, but I mean, I've got some, where I've been featured, whether on podcasts and things like that. And those are on my website on ndumihadebe.com. And I will be getting back online. But after writing the book, the response was quite overwhelming. There was a lot of media interviews, radio, TV, and so on, and which people don't see that it's more of me pouring into other people than I am to myself. So last year I took a break from social media, and I decided to be selfish because I needed to self-preserve. So I did that. So only now I'm getting back into it, and working on some other projects that I will put out there. And they might not necessarily be specific to Black techs, but I think the emphasis still needs to be on boundaries, because boundaries are applicable at work, at home. I mean, even our capacity to just do what we want to thrive. I really believe that actually really hinges on our level of bravery to say, this is who I am, this is the direction that I've taken, and this is how I want to implement it, and not apologizing for it. But in closing, I just want to point out that the reason why we struggle with boundaries as Black people is because we grow up we are parented to be seen, not necessarily to be heard. So the more we are not asked, how do you feel? What do you think? How do you see it? We basically are not taught the skills and tools to learn to hear ourselves, to learn to hear what our thoughts are saying about. We don't use them as a gauge. The gauge we use for gas, that's supposed to be an internal gauge in saying, am I okay here? Am I feeling safe? something is not right. I just don't want to be in this environment, and whether it makes full sense or not. So the fact that we are raised in that way, it means we are not socialized to prioritize ourselves. So we go out in spaces in this dynamic. This is the world, this is our colleagues, this is the people we work with, and this is us. And this is the challenge when people say a man has gone and applied for a job that he qualifies 30% for, it's because he didn't do this dynamic. He went like this, right? So the question here is not so much boundaries as it is the self-esteem that has been broken down by the self-betrayal that a person does when they do not honor their personal boundaries. And I think with that, I'd like to say thank you for adding to my journey of wanting to reimagine the way of supporting, as George put it, and a journey where I'm committed to helping more and more people reconcile, rebuild their self-esteem so that they can have the courage to be who they are. They can have the freedom. Thank you.
Wow. And how do we get a hold of you?
How you get a hold of me is ndumihadebe.com. And I am on social media, but not very, very active at the moment. So I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook, but the best way is ndumihadebe.com.
Thank you.
And my email address is hello@ndumihadebe.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ndumi. I mean, people might think that you and I have known each other for many years, but it's only just under 2 weeks. And I need to acknowledge your friend and also my former coachee that felt we needed to get together. You want to mention her name?
Lindelwa Nzimande.
Let's acknowledge her.
Yes, so I have not even had a chat. I'm only seeing Lindelwa tomorrow, and I will be sharing this good news that I've been here with you all. And so I do want to say thank you to Lindelwa for suggesting that I connect with Coach Sam. And I do believe in the power of collaborations. And she shares this sentiment, and we'll continue spreading the word.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're going to call you back. That is Ndumi Hadebe, and it's easy to find her. And I hope you learn a lot from her. And my colleagues, let me acknowledge George Mutenda Zamera, Coach George Mutenda Zamera, our HR specialists, Guru. I've never used the name Guru, but every time I listen to Sylvia, I think I'm going to start using the weight behind Guru, because she's a guru. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Guru of human resources, holistic human resources, not just one field. And the insights that you always share with us, Sylvia, it's appreciated. And sometimes I think I need to have 1 full hour session with you here so that you can talk to without any limit, because there's so much to share. In fact, we'll talk about that. And of course, my friend Divesh, as George has said, we've been doing this thing since COVID. Yeah, we never stopped. We've interviewed so many experts, and we continue doing it. And in the meantime, he has become a specialist, a master's in AI. You know, George, just this last week, my other organization that I'm part of, Coach Hub, launched the very first AI coach in partnership with Microsoft called Amy. So Amy does coach at the lower level. And I've observed it being, in fact, they are busy going around introducing Amy. But Amy is not meant to replace us human coaches. Amy is meant to enrich us, you know. So a lot is happening in the field of AI, and I'm proud to have a colleague and a friend like you, Divesh, who has masters in AI. I don't know who advised you, because this was really, you were ahead of your time, and now we are looking at you. Look at him. A year ago, we didn't think that this was, now everybody's talking AI. So thanks, George, for Divesh, for being part of this journey. Thank you very much, colleagues. I just want to put this program in context. By the way, Ndumi, you are leading the charge. This was the episode number 1 of this series, HCD 1 2025, Human Capital Development, powered by coaching and mentoring, lifelong learning and development philosophy. So you have set the standard, so we're going to keep it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was the mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. Our shows are based on the principle we call the idea. We inform and entertain, develop and educate, empower and support, associate and network. That's the idea. And I hope we lived up to that principle. Thank you and goodbye. Colleagues, stay in the studio as we disconnect from the viewers.